Welcome to the Butterfly Tumblr Radio channel. Are you ready to start today's story? Let's get started. Imagine stumbling upon a secret of your wife's that could shatter your entire world. This isn't a movie, it's my true story. Inside an ordinary diaper bag, the evidence of marital betrayal was hidden. How should I face this sudden truth from suspicion? Revelation to complete collapse. It seems like the train of our marriage has come off the rails. But the story, it's only just beginning. I gave her all she deserved. I am a 32-year-old male, married to my wife Isabel, a 26-year-old female. 3 years ago we have a 7-month-old daughter. A couple of days ago, I discovered something in her luggage that blew my mind. It was a package of condoms. I'm not the type of guy who inspects his wife's bag. But this time it was critical. My wife was in the shower, and I needed to change my baby's diaper. I had placed the baby on the changing table when I discovered we had run out of one. When my wife goes for a walk with the baby, she always packs a couple of diapers in her purse. Her bag was laying near the baby counter. It's easier for me to grab it. I opened it and discovered 2 diapers inside. While pulling them out, something came out of the bag and fell on the floor, a pack of condoms. It was a 3-pack. The bag was open with only one left. I checked the bag. If the other 2 had fallen inside, it was not present. This meant that the 2 had previously been used. My kid was wailing heavily, so I kept the condom in my pocket and changed her. After she got out of the shower, I put the baby in the crib, took the condom from my pocket, and asked Isabel about it. The act on her became public, and she flatly denied it. She claimed it was not hers. She attempted to gaslight the matter and blame it on me. I was astounded at how she could lie so easily. I explained that I found it in her luggage. She responded, "But you just pulled it out of your pocket, right?" I flipped out at her because she was unable to admit it was hers. She busted out laughing and exclaimed, "Poor you. Look at your puppy's face. I was messing up with you. Yeah, this condom is mine. I purchased it for us." She winked while saying this. She was clearly lying because we don't use protection. She's breastfeeding and her cycle has yet to return, so we don't utilize protection anymore. She disregarded me like that. Her cycle has returned to normal, therefore we may require protection if we do not want to have back-to-back children. I asked her what had happened to the 2 of them. "There's only 1 in the packet. It should have been 3. She chuckled and stated it was a funny story. She brought it yesterday and then went out with pals, implying that I was hitting on her friend Carter. Things grew heated between them, so they decided to find a corner. But they didn't have any condoms, so she lent them to. I looked at her with incredulity and said, "You are going to believe this?" She responded, "Yes, because that is the only truth." She suggested I could call Carter and asked for myself. I didn't call her because if Jenna is lying, Carter is obviously on board and she will also lie. So what is the point? I didn't contact her. But I informed Jenna that I'm not buying her stuff and that she needed to come clean about whatever she was up to. She's now gaslighting me and attempting to make me feel guilty for not trusting her. She is weeping that I don't understand her, that she recently gave birth and is suffering from postpartum depression. In the midst of this, I accused her of cheating. I haven't tried to make things up to her. I looked at it that way, however. She has made the environment murky. She's just curled up inside the bed in the dark room. She's reluctant to turn on the light, claiming she dislikes the brightness. She isn't eating at all. I'm not sure how she is while I'm home, but this is what she's been doing since the confrontation. I'm the one who generally apologizes directly after her arguments because, rarely does she break the ice by saying sorry first. However, this time, I don't feel the need to apologize at all. I don't believe I made a mistake by asking her about the condoms right away. Do you believe I could have done something different? Seriously. If she's using postpartum depression as an excuse to distribute condoms like Halloween, Lily, perhaps it's time for a different type of delivery, a reality check. However, I have to concede that her excuse game is stronger than her dedication to honesty. What you could have done differently: bring your own emergency condom in a diaper bag. Who knows? Maybe next time she'll put on a clown nose and say it's for stress reduction. Update 1: Thank you for interacting with my post. You all ran claiming that she flashed the red flag square in my face. Indeed she did, and I didn't let it slide. Some of you requested additional information on Isabel before commenting on the situation. Jan and I had known each other for more than 6 years. We met at a friend's party. She was the most beautiful woman out there. We spent the evening chatting, dancing, and having fun. But I neglected to ask her for our phone number. I am not a party person. But it was my friend's promotion party, and he demanded I attend. I asked my friend about Isabel, and he stated he didn't know her. She was his colleague's pal. I asked my acquaintance to ask his co-worker for Isabel's number. He was hesitant to do so because my friend was married, and he did not want his co-workers to believe he was hitting on Isabel. After persuasion, he received a number. I saved it for a week before texting her. I was unsure how she would interpret this. I did not want to come across as desperate or cheap. I mean, she was beautiful, and I'm sure there were plenty of men at the party who wanted her number. Nevertheless, I mustered the bravery to message her. Luckily, she replied that she regretted not asking for my phone number. We got along well after that. She was working a part-time job and stated that she did not have a full-time work since it required a lot of commitment, and she prefers to live freely on her own terms. It could have been a red flag, but I didn't consider it that way. I was fully absorbed in my work, which I did not enjoy. I wanted to be as free as she was. So it resonated with me. After 2 years of dating, I proposed to her, and we married in a private ceremony attended by friends and family. Isabel did not want to spend money on an extravagant wedding. She intended to spend that money on a vacation instead. After the wedding, we took a 15-day journey to Europe. Isabel became pregnant 2 years after their marriage. She panicked because we hadn't planned it that way. We wanted to explore the world and undertake a variety of activities before having a baby. She wanted to get rid of it. I wasn't pleased with her decision. I adore children and wanted one. However, she had other intentions and coerced her into pregnancy. When she became pregnant unexpectedly, I attempted to persuade her to keep the baby. She was torn, but she eventually decided to keep it. Pregnancy is already a difficult and exhausting experience for women, and because I persuaded her to do so, I had to bear the brunt of it. I did everything to keep her pleased. Fortunately, her pregnancy was without difficulties, and she had tantrums, which I gladly accepted because, it was her time. Her condition worsened after the kid was born. I assumed it was due to a lack of sleep and exhaustion from nursing the baby. She became so miserable that she felt confined and unable to enjoy her independence. I took her to therapy, and the doctor diagnosed her with postpartum depression, which is natural in all women post-delivery. I tried everything to give her the independence she required. I hired a full-time nanny so she could have more time to herself. Our baby was 2 months old at the time, and Isabel has since resumed her previous habits of partying and going out with her friends. I never stopped her because the doctor claimed a happy mother will nourish her baby. 7 months later, here we are. I found a condom in her luggage, and she is blaming her best buddy in order to save herself. But back to the updates. As I previously stated, Isabel was attempting to gaslight the issue, but I refused to give in. I informed her that if she believes she can put on an act and get away with it, she is mistaken. I'm not going to let go of this until she gives me the truth, since what she stated earlier was complete BS. She wasn't opening up, so I began digging out myself. I wanted to check her phone, but she is so protective of it that I would never be able to access it. Even when she slept, she would keep it by her or under her pillow. She was always like that with her phone, so I never asked her directly. Asking her to show her phone was also out of the question. She'd make a big deal about how I was doubting her and so on. I don't know how else to acquire the evidence because this woman has no conscience and refuses to confess. Any suggestions are much appreciated. If Isabel guards her phone as if it were a state secret, you may need to summon your inner James Bond to become inventive. Maybe you might seek the services of a diversion master, such as a newborn with an intense fascination for sparkling objects. While Isabel is occupied, you could stealthily swipe her phone and discover her digital secrets. Or if you're feeling especially daring, attempt the traditional accidental spill approach. Oops, honey, it seems like I accidentally knocked over my drink on your phone. Let me get some paper towels while you clean it up. Just make sure you have a backup plan in case she suspects foul play, such as a pre-packed bag and a one-way ticket to a nation where lying and deception are a thing of the past. Remember that in this cat and mouse game, the mouse may need to be a little cunning in order to outwit the cat. Just watch out for any trapdoors. Gitmo may be concealing more than just her phone in her bag of tricks. Also provide an update. Thank you for your advice. As most of you advised, I was about to employ a planner, but I discovered a solution on my own first. One Sunday, I had the idea to fill our social media accounts. I couldn't discover anything from the public eye, but her photo with her best friend Carter drew my attention. I stalked Carter's profile and discovered she was married with a toddler. Jenna mentioned the previous day that Carter was making out with a guy at a bar and that she needed a condom. I was like, wait a minute. Does your hubby know about all of this? I went to Isabel and apologized for doubting her. For such a thing I trust you if you stated Carter. It should be her. She smiled at me. I asked her if Carter always does this. She answered yes and began recounting some of the instances in which Carter made advances on the males in the pub. I wasn't sure whether it was true or if she was making it up to cover for herself. But after hearing her purportedly humorous stories about Carter, I dropped the bombshell. I said, that's funny. By the way, isn't Carter married with a toddler? Are you supporting her cheating? Does her hubby know about all of this? She froze like an iceberg, then began yelling, no. That's not what I intended. It's just healthy flirtation, nothing more. I intervened. But you hear so many stories about her picking men at the bar. And why would she need a condom for normal flirting? She asked, did I say Carter? My awful, stupid pregnant brain. I meant Lena, my solitary friend. She's the one who's playing around. Carter is a sober person. She doesn't do those things. I was unsure how quickly this woman could create stories. I laughed and replied, I got you. You don't need to rescue Carter's. But are you concerned that I'll tell Carter's hubby the truth? She exhaled, yes, please do not do that. Her marriage would be wrecked. They've got a baby. She cares deeply for her hubby. It was just pointless sex, nothing more. I smiled at her. I knew she was speaking for herself, not Carter. Everything she told about Carter was Isabel's. But she's not going to admit it, so I told her I wasn't happy about Carter cheating on her spouse. So I'm going to tell her husband everything. Dana yelled at me, why did I act like a saint? Who am I to do moral policing here, blah blah blah. I said I am not listening to anything. I'll tell Carter's hubby about everything. She relaxed and began sobbing. I got the impression she was about to confess. But I wasn't ready for it yet. I stormed into my room and shut it. I did not want her to get away with her infidelity by simply admitting it. I wanted my revenge. This adultery will cost her both the marriage and her friendship. I messaged Carter on Instagram, informing her that Isabel had told me about her nasty little secret. She was appalled. I emailed you audio of Isabel raving about Carter's affair. Carter left me at the scene. But I heard Isabel's phone ring a few moments later. Isabel was hammering on the door, weeping and yelling, why are you doing this to me? Open the door, why are you ruining everything? Why aren't you trusting me? Probably she was still on the phone with Carter when she yelled. He isn't opening the door. God knows what he is up to. Then Carter called me. She asked me to listen to Isabel. I stated I would not listen to anyone. And the next thing I'll do is send the recording to her husband. She freaked out. She pleaded with me not to do anything before listening to Isabel. I said I was going to call her husband. And then we can listen to all of the stories together. She exclaimed that whatever Isabel said was not Carter's story. But Isabel and she had been cheating on me for over 4 months. I asked her why she didn't stop her friend. Carter stated that she and the other girls attempted to reason with her. But Isabel would argue that she had given me a beautiful baby and thus deserved this small pleasure. Okay, fair enough. I was convinced Carter was telling the truth. My gut feeling had long hinted at the truth. But I wanted to cut off Isabel's entire support system. I invited Carter and her husband over. I'm not sure if I went too far. But I wanted Carter's husband to know what a piece of crap Isabel is and that he should keep Carter away from her. Carter agreed to come but asked that I not show the recordings to her husband because Isabel was so good at storytelling that anyone could believe it was true. She did not want her husband to doubt her unnecessarily. I said done. Carter was at my house within an hour. I was locked inside my room until she arrived. The moment she came I heard Isabel shouting at her. Why are you here? I told you I manage now, go away. I'm going to deal with this. I came out as Carter was yelling at Isabel for falsely framing her. It was just too much chaos with both of them screaming at each other. Carter's husband intervened and started selling her side of the story. Carter gave Isabel a look of don't dare lie. Isabel solemnly confessed everything. She accepted that whatever incident she told me that day was not about Carter, it was all hers. She had been picking up men from the pub and sleeping with them. Carter's husband was shocked that Isabel was such a witch. She was then making her friend the scapegoat to get away with her cheating. He yelled at Carter. This is the kind of friend you brood. She was about to wreck our marriage. After Isabel was done with the confession, Carter and her husband stood up and left. And Carter said, don't you ever contact me. I love my husband and my family. You are not worth losing them. Isabel held Carter's hands and started crying. But she shrugged her off and went away. After they left, Isabel looked at me and said, are you happy now? What did you get by humiliating me in front of my friend and her husband? Is this what men do? I glared at her and said, your woman card is not going to work anymore. You've used all of your cards, pregnancy, postpartum, everything now. I'm going to show you the consequences of your actions. The humiliation you are talking about is just halfway through it. You have more to come. This is not over. You said you deserved to cheat on me because you gave me a baby. Right, I'm going to give you what you deserve. Just wait. I took my stuff and went into the other room. I called up my lawyer to discuss my case. I told her to dig out any loopholes in the law and get me full custody of my daughter. She asked me to get all the evidence of Isabel's negligence towards the baby, like her drinking and partying habits and her hookups. She said he would make a case around child safety, that it was not safe for a child to live with a mother who brings new men to the house every day. I don't know how promising it is, but I'm definitely up for any fight to have full custody of my little girl. I'm going to protect her from her liar and cheater mother. I'll update it when all of this is over. It looks like Isabel's little house of cards came crashing down on Basilan and Jenga Tower. And an earthquake. Who knew playing detective on social media could lead to such a dramatic reveal? But hey, at least you finally peeled back the layers of Isabel's dishonesty like a particularly tasty onion. And speaking of onions, it seems like she's crying enough tears to water a whole field of them. But sorry, Isabel. No amount of crocodile tears will undo the mess you've created. And now it's time for the real show to begin, the legal battle for custody. It's like a high-stakes game of Monopoly. Except instead of hotels on Park Place, you're fighting for the future of your daughter. And let's be honest, Janice's behavior makes her about as trustworthy as a used car salesman in a clown suit. So gear up, strap in, and get ready to fight tooth and nail for your little girl. And hey, if Isabel wants to play the victim card, she'd better be prepared for you to bring out the whole deck of evidence against her. It's time to show her that actions have consequences. And cheating your way through life doesn't fly when there's a child's well-being at stake. Update 3. Sorry, I had to erase my last update. I had revealed my lawyer's plan for ripping off the custody from Isabel. I shouldn't have done that. The day after posting the update, when I met my lawyer, he asked me not to discuss the case with anyone. I told him I posted this on subreddit anonymously. He asked me to delete it as soon as possible. Now that everything is over, I have reposted it. It is available on my profile page. I'm still not allowed to get into the nitty-gritty of the law. But here's the other details. After the confrontation, I slept in the guest bedroom. I attempted to have a brief encounter with Isabel. She would try to come close to me and make me breakfast and dinner. But I shot her off. She even made a sorry cake and bought flowers and cards. She thought I'd get over it once my anger subsided. She had no clue what was coming on her way. Almost a month later, my lawyer came down to my apartment with the divorce paperwork. Isabel freaked out. She was terrified when she was served. She looked at me helplessly. Like, what are you doing? How could you do this to me after the attorney left? I asked her to pack her stuff and leave. She cried and pleaded to give a chance to our marriage for the sake of her baby. She tried to hug me, but I pushed her away. She said she had nowhere to go. I chuckled. Not my concern anymore. I gave you everything you desired. Now I'm going to give you what you deserve. And you deserve to be on the streets. She threatened to take away the last dime I had. I said, sure, good luck obtaining a lawyer. The nice ones don't come for free unless you want to open your legs to employ them. She went towards my daughter's nursery. But I blocked her. Well, you're not getting her. She's not living on the streets with you. She broke down because I was tearing her off her daughter. I said, are you not interested in being a mother? I'm releasing you from all accountability. You can now lead the life you desire. She gathered her belongings and left. My lawyer developed a strong case for full custody, such as employing a full-time nanny and taking work from home gigs. However, it turned out that Isabel was not interested in keeping her baby. She did not fight for custody because she did not have a house or a job. However, she went insane in her attempt to collect alimony. I needed to pay a particular sum cannot reveal. It was far too low than what she was demanding. And it was entirely worthwhile to get rid of that from my life. Carter and her husband came by one day to check on the baby. Carter apologized for not notifying me about Isabel's hookups. She claimed she tried to prevent Isabel from adultery. But she refused to listen. She felt sad for the infant. Carter said she was delighted I accepted full custody because Isabel wasn't as involved with the baby and wouldn't be able to raise it correctly like I was. Carter told me that Isabel would always weep about the baby being fussy and grumpy and so on. She was overplaying her postpartum experience. Carter's spouse informed me that Isabel had contacted them for assistance. But he had chased her away. Isabel had been moving from one friend's couch to another since then. And her drinking habits had also taken a toll on the tower. I said that I don't care what she does with her life anymore. They offered to help out with babysitting. I appreciate their good gesture. But I don't think I'd need them. My parents have moved in to help me with the baby. We also have a full-time nanny. So I think the baby will be okay. I might allow her to meet her mother eventually. But not now. She was simply happy and protected with her father. You now have a lease for custody of your tiny bundle of joy. And Jane is going to explore the land of couch surfing and cheap drinks. It's like a modern-day fairy tale. Except instead of a happily ever after, you have a deadbeat ex and a baby who would be better off without her. And as for Isabel's alimony claims, let's just say she has about the same chance of receiving them as she does of winning the lotto while riding a unicorn. But hey, at least she has a talent for consistency, consistently making awful life decisions. So here's to you, OP. Navigating the dark waters of divorce and custody fights with the skill of a seasoned sailor amid a sea of mayhem. May your days be full of diapers and chuckles. And may Jenny's actions serve as a warning tale for future generations. I hope you have earned every moment of calm and quiet that comes your way. Here is the next story. I went out of the courthouse. Free again, but with a heavy heart. My rage was gradually diminishing. And to my surprise, I hadn't been duped too terribly this time. I gestured toward the public parking lot where my trusty old F-150 was waiting. I had a 40-mile commute home and needed to hit the road. My children would soon be home from school, and I needed to be there for them. Though one neighbor woman watched them when I was busy, I felt compelled to spend as much time with them as possible now that their mother was no longer present. As I passed a small, filthy bar near the police station, something inexplicably drew me inside. As the customers turned to look at the outsider, the ruckus inside quieted down significantly. I could sense I did not belong. Almost everyone in sight wore a police uniform or proudly flashed a badge. Most were also armed. I paused to let my eyes adjust to the dimly illuminated room after the blinding August afternoon heat. I nearly sighed in relief as the icy cold air surrounded me. The thermometer on the courthouse square read 108 with no wind. My clothing, saturated with sweat from both the tray and the tent court sessions, adhered painfully to my skin. I was convinced my body odor was more visible than I preferred. It appeared that you could cut through the thick smoke with a knife. I made my way to the bar. Despite the health-conscious era, the clientele smoked like chimneys, possibly to ease the stress of their work. I took another look around the room before grabbing an empty seat at the bar. The bartender studied me over for a moment before approaching, her raised eyebrow and silence indicating that I was not welcome. I leaned forward and announced "Dos liquor no glass." The bartender turned and walked over to the coolers, rummaged through them before retrieving a bottle from the back. She pumped the top and placed it in front of me with a thump. "That'll cost $4.75. I took a big, pleasant drink from the bottle, savoring the coldest beer I'd had in a week. Mo was known for serving the coldest beer in the county, keeping their cooler at a chilly 30°F. I reached into my pocket, pulled out my wallet, and placed a $5 bill on the bar. She remained silent as she picked up the bill and approached the cash register. Since her husband Mo died, she had been the owner and single full-time employee. Without saying anything, she slapped my 25-cent change on the bar in front of me before turning and waddling away. By this stage, I had consumed nearly 2/3 of my Dos Equis. The bartender proceeded to deliberately ignore me. I wondered whether they would serve me another beer if I inquired. In the mirror behind the bar, as the noise level rose again, I observed the other patrons resume their interrupted conversations. I only had 1 or 2 swallows of beer left when a group at one of the tables decided to leave. 2 of the group members stared at me as they passed by on their way to the door. The third, a plainclothes officer, came to a stop alongside me. "It's been a long time. Dean, why did you return?" I looked up at the big guy and wondered if I could take him down again. Even after all these years, the urge remained strong. I was in better shape and he appeared softer. I might have been able to beat him, but I didn't want to. Our last encounter had not gone well for either of us. I forced myself to relax, letting the tension leave my body. "Stupid, I suppose. Sam, I just finished up in court and decided to have a beer before going home. That's not against the law, right? I just shook off my 3rd strike and passed on another cheesecake. I needed a beer before going home." I laughed and said, "But you probably know everything about that. I'm sure you've tried her cheating ways or know someone who has." Sam smirked at me. "You have the legal right to drink wherever you want, but you make people nervous. Why don't you find another place to drink where you won't bother the other customers? Nobody wants a loser like you around. This makes us look bad, being seen with a man who cannot prevent his women from cheating." I laughed. "I'll consider it. I get it. It makes sense not to drink with old friends. Are some of them frightened? I will still pursue them. Or did one of them also sleep with Paula? If so, tell them I don't care. I learned a lesson. After you slept with Terry, are you still with the cheater?" Sam tensed and leaned closer. I knew he was still married to my ex, and their relationship was strained. Both had been unfaithful, separated several times. And yet they always got back together. It was surprising that their marriage lasted 7 years. I had only been married to her for 8 months before I kicked her out for cheating. I wondered why Sam hadn't done the same. Some guys don't seem to care about such things. When I discovered Sam was having an affair with my first wife, I decided to handle the situation on my own. During several nights on duty, I quietly exited my patrol area, waiting for the moment I had anticipated eventually. I noticed Sam's automobile parked near my house. I pulled into my driveway, entered my house, and discovered Sam and Terry in bed, kissing and cuddling after their adventures. The only thing keeping me out of jail that night were the hidden cameras I had installed to monitor the bedroom and living room. I slammed the door so violently that it ricocheted against the stop, startling the sleeping lovers. As I stood at the foot of the bed, glaring at my ex-friend and soon-to-be ex-wife, Terry screamed. She scrambled to cover herself with the sheet, fear evident on her face. Sam leaped from the bed and moved toward me, ready for confrontation. Knowing exactly how to provoke him, I started verbally attacking him, demanding that he get out of my house and warning that I would inform his wife about his infidelity. I had my cell phone in hand, snapping photos just in case the video cameras missed anything. Sam swore and knocked the phone from my hands before trying to hit me. I replied by kicking him in the groin and driving my knee into his face as he doubled over. He crumpled to the floor unconscious. For good measure, I delivered one final kick before turning to Terry, who was still cowering in fear. I instructed her to be out of the house before my shift ended. Grabbing my phone, I left the house and returned to my cruiser, confident that the cameras in my home were capturing everything and feeding it to a computer in my locked office. I drove straight to Sam's home. It was almost 3:00 a.m. when I arrived and rang the doorbell at the Carey residence. A very sleepy wife answered the door, and when she saw me standing there in uniform, she screamed, "No, please, not Sam." "Yes, Sam. But not in the way you dread, Mrs. Garcia. I just came from home and found him in bed with my wife. I have pictures if you need them." "No, that cannot be. He's supposed to be at the station tonight. He's the surgeon of the watch." "I'm sorry, Mrs. Garcia, but you've been misinformed. He was off duty today. Jackson is actually the surgeon of the watch. Do you want me to send you the pictures? If so, please give me your email, and I'll get them to you in a day or two." "No. I can't believe that Sam would do that to me." "Indeed he did. I took a look at the pictures on my phone." And she collapsed on the floor crying. I felt sorry for her but also felt a sense of satisfaction for bringing more pain to Sam. I turned away from the crying woman, smiled to myself, and returned to my cruiser to resume my patrol. Approximately 30 minutes after leaving the Garcia home, I was summoned back to the station. I was relieved of duty and suspended without pay for leaving my patrol area and for attacking an officer in the line of duty. Surprisingly, Garcia and Terry had informed the lieutenant that she had called for help, thinking there was an intruder in her home. It was stated that when going home for intimacy, I found Sam in the house and went into a frenzy, accusing them of adultery and violently beating him. I used the video footage from my house to defend myself against the accusations of assaulting Sam. Those images prevented me from being arrested for attacking Sam. However, as a result, he was demoted and temporarily suspended from the force. So even though I believed my actions were justified, Sam had his own reasons to hold animosity toward me. Well, that marriage came apart, and my job went with it. I was fired for my mistakes and taken to the cleaners by dear sweet Terry. I lost the house and half of our savings. I was ordered to pay support to her, but thankfully that ended in less than a year when she married Sam after his divorce was final. Sam despised me. I could see his fists clenching, ready to attack me. A part of me almost wanted him to, but prayed he wouldn't. I glared at Sam and waited. It was his move. He finally smirked at me and said, "Yeah, Terry and I are still married." Jerk. "No. Thank you. I know you're the one who sent us the incriminating photographs. Why don't you have a life and leave us alone?" He chuckled and said, "We are not in hell. You might be doing me a favor. She's heard so many times that I'm a cheating bastard. And now that you've sent so many images, I may cheat on her and she would not believe it. You have caused some troubles. But I have to acknowledge that you have also benefited me." I almost told him I wasn't the one shooting and sending the most of the photos. I had taken some of Sam one night, and another officer had noticed me. He and a few of his co-workers appreciated what I had done and began doing it themselves. Many officers despised Sam for various reasons, some of which were similar to my own. They made his and Terry's lives miserable. I also didn't tell him that I just provided one set of images. I never followed him or her. The one picture I gave was a fortuitous encounter with him and another woman in a pub shortly after my divorce from Terry. Now I couldn't care less. Sam turned and strolled cheerfully out the door. I squinted as sunshine streamed through the door behind him. As Sam was leaving, one of my last surviving law enforcement pals came in and saw me sitting at the bar. She smiled and approached me. Jackie and I had attended the police academy together. She had joined the sheriff's department, while I joined the city police force. She glided across the floor and took the stool next to me. Our reserved bartender lifted her brow as she observed Jackie. Ushering in her usual, she asked Jackie, nodded and pointed to my dosage. The bottle was then held up with 2 fingers. Within moments, a beer was placed in front of every one of us. Jackie handed our host a 10 and waved her off. We all took a few swallows of our beer. Jackie then stared at me in the bar mirror. "I was at the courthouse earlier. I saw you and the family court learned about Paula. Daniel Dean, you certainly can't pick them, can you?" "What is it now, 3?" I signed and nodded. "Yes, it is." Sam started the ball rolling with Terry. I helped with that one. It only took around 8 months. Then there was the kid's mother, Mary. At the very least, she survived over 5 years before I caught her with the school's football coach. However, Patty was a huge surprise. We had just been married for 9 months when I suspected she was cheating on me. I suppose I should have anticipated it, Dan. I was an officer who knew how. I noticed Jackie's face stiffen and hurriedly continued. "Sorry, Jackie. I did not intend to imply that all women on the force are like that. I am just bitter. She was a freaking dispatcher, for Christ's sake. I'm not sure what I mean, crap." Jackie smiled as she placed her delicate hand on my forearm. "I understand, Dean. It's virtually an occupational danger. There's so much tension and testosterone in the air. We are all tempted. Some of us lack the willpower to resist the temptation and return home for our release. Yes, anything. I see you and Ed have not succumbed to the temptation. Though if you and a few others can accomplish it, why can't Patty or Sam Dean? You're familiar with this from your time on the force. Some folks are simply weak. Some are serial womanizers such as Sam. Now cheer up. Drink your beverage and get home to the kids." She shook her head, saying, "That is one I will never figure out. I still can't believe Mary flew off for an international job and left those adorable children with you. How can a mother help? How can any parent simply take off and abandon their children like that? I don't know Jackie, the bank class she did. I honestly thought that if the court refused to let her take them out of the country, she would stay here or try to take them anyway. I enjoy having them home with me. Little Howard completed kindergarten this year, and Sarah was in 1st grade. Everything is still new and thrilling to them, and they enjoy life so much. I couldn't stand it if she stayed and had primary custody of them. Working and planning for their care can be difficult at times, but I wouldn't change anything for the world." Jackie and I finished our beers simultaneously. We sat for a moment, simply enjoying each other's company. Jackie sighed and stood to go, saying, "I guess I should go. I still need to make supper for Ed, do some laundry, and get to bed early enough to be ready for the morning shift." I stood and followed her out of the dimly lit bar into the bright light and heat of another August afternoon in southwest Missouri. We had both parked in the same location. So we talked as we walked to our cars on the way home. I reflected on my previous failure in the romance department. At least this time, I was smart enough to obtain a prenuptial agreement from Paddy. We each walked away from the marriage with what we had brought into it, splitting the small amount we had accumulated over the course of a little more than a year. When my second marriage ended, I was operating the family farm but did not own it as a result. All I had to do was divide my bank accounts with Mary. She had been furious about it for some reason. She believed my mother had signed over the farm to me after Dad died. Actually, all she did was hand over the operation to me. I suppose Mary assumed that because Mom called it my farm, I owned the land, equipment and animals. Now I'm wondering if that was why she married me. Mom died shortly after Lily and I divorced. So I inherited the farm. It wasn't a large place, only about 2 sections. But it provided a comfortable living. In fact, I earned more on the farm than I would have as a patrolman if I hadn't lost my job. Furthermore, I appreciated the work and the freedom far more. If I didn't feel like working some days, I could just relax. Life was hard, but I enjoyed it on the farm. I arrived home approximately 45 minutes after leaving Joplin. My 2 children and their sister were in the backyard. The kids were playing in their wading pool while Tammy sat at the picnic table, reading and watching them. Sarah jumped out of the pool and dashed toward me when she noticed me. Howard followed more slowly. I hugged both kids and headed to the kitchen for a beer. I returned to the table and sat across from Tammy. "Hey Dean, is it all over now?" she asked. "Yeah. I am out of the game. Tim just struck out in the bottom of the 9th. I gazed out over the brown, dry grass in the yard through the trees lining the stream bank. I could barely see the small creek that separated my yard from the south field. My mind drifted to a more pressing problem than my 3rd failed marriage. I'd started feeding my cattle hay nearly 3 weeks early, and I was worried I wouldn't have enough for the winter if it didn't rain soon. The news reported this as the worst drought in 65 years. Cornfields that usually yielded between 150 and 200 bushels per acre had been chopped for silage because the grain was too poor to mature for combining. Other crops were faring just as badly due to the lack of water. Many farmers were selling cattle they wouldn't normally sell because they couldn't feed them. It was expected to get much worse before it got better. I could manage thanks to crop insurance, but things would be tight. At least I could irrigate some of my grassland by pumping water from the stream. I glanced at Tammy and saw her watching me, attempting to smile. "Well, I can watch the kids for the rest of the day, Tim. Why don't you head home? I don't think I'll need you tomorrow, but I'll call if I do that fall." Sarah was in 2nd grade and Howard was in 1st. Shortly after school started, Tammy came to see me. "Dean, I won't be able to watch the kids after school much this year. Things aren't getting any better for Jack and me. Jack's already working part-time at the Female. But we are going to lose the farm if I can't find a full-time job in town. I'm sorry, but I need more money to get us through this drought. I'll watch them until I find a job or you find someone else. However, you should plan on finding someone soon." I said, "I'm sorry to hear that, Tim. If you and Jack need anything and I can help, let me know. The kids love you so much. Do you know anyone who can help?" "No, not offhand. I'll keep my eye out though." "Sorry." In early October, Tammy stayed to talk after I came in from the field. "Dean, have you found a sitter yet?" "No. I found an older woman in town willing to watch them part-time. But no one wants to come out here. Most aren't willing to stay late when working in the fields, or they want a guaranteed full-time job." "Why did you find work?" "Sort of. I got hired at Walmart for the Christmas season. They said I might stay on full-time if things work out. I start next week." "Sorry." Between Tammy, the older woman, and a few friends' wives, I managed childcare through the holidays and until early March. But juggling helpers was tough. Some wouldn't come to the farm, others had no transportation. So I had to deliver the kids to the sitter in the afternoon and pick them up late at night. Sometimes I had to stop work early because no sitter would keep the kids late. In early March, I was repairing machinery in the shop when I heard a car drive up. I saw a sheriff's car in the driveway and Jackie walking back to her car. I smiled and yelled, "Hi, Jackie. What brings you out here? Did they finally find the body where I left it?" "Not funny, Dean. I have a little problem and thought you might help. Have you found someone to watch your kids yet?" "Sort of. I have half a dozen people who watch them part-time. But I miss a lot of work calling them around. And sometimes I have to stop working early to pick them up. I haven't found anyone who can be on call all the time and watch them here." "Why, Jackie?" "Well, my sister isn't much better at picking husbands than you are at picking spouses. She caught her spouse cheating a few weeks ago and kicked him out. She filed for divorce and needs work. This is the second husband she's caught cheating. She was a stay-at-home mom. And the job market is tough. She thinks she'll lose the house too. They've been renting. Jack and I said she could stay with us. But she needs a job. Her ex isn't sending money. How about that?" I faintly recalled Jackie's sister. Jackie was a few years behind me in school. And Lily was a few years behind her. "Jackie, that is a lot of driving. It's around 25 kilometers from your home to mine." "Yeah. But she desperately needs the work, Dean." "I don't know. Some days I wouldn't need her for more than 3 hours, other days I'd need her in the morning and later in the evening. Do you want to stay here all day? Would she expect to be paid for her time waiting for the kids after taxes and gas? She would not earn much on short days. Are you certain she wants to do this?" "I'm not sure, Dean, but she needs something other days. She'll most likely receive 12 or 14 hours when you're planting or harvesting. So things will balance out." "Yes. But I might not need her on certain days." "She has children too, right?" Jackie nodded. "Who will watch them? Will she bring them here or are they attending school? How will she handle this if they are not in school? This could be beneficial for her. They could be here as part of the agreement. She wouldn't have to worry about childcare." Jackie stated the kids hadn't started school yet. Which was a comfort. "This may work out." I grinned and said, "Have her come over. And we will see what happens." Jackie and I talked a little more before she departed. She stated that she needed to get back on patrol. It must be lovely to be a deputy sheriff and be able to drive throughout the majority of the county without worry. 2 days later, shortly after I'd gotten the kids on the school bus, a rusted old Mustang came into my driveway. I was anxious that I would have to give the driver a gallon of oil before they could depart. It was quite hot. I observed as a gorgeous but dilapidated, pale-faced young woman came out of the old, beat-up automobile. Inside, 2 little children bounced around, trying to see outside once again. I was in the shop wiping oil from my hands as I approached her. She seemed vaguely familiar. And I was pretty convinced she was Jackie's younger sister. Lily. As I approached, I grinned. She was uncertain and a little scared. "You must be Lily unless I guessed incorrectly. Jackie informed me that you would be coming to visit. I doubt I would have recognized you if I hadn't expected you." Lily offered me a timid smile and nodded. "Yeah. I'm sorry to bother you like this, Dean, Mr. Peterson. But I'm in a desperate situation. My husband occasionally fails to send enough money to provide for the children's needs. And I can't expect Jackie and her husband to provide everything for us. I already feel like such a worthless freeloader." "First things first, Lily. You got it right the first time. My name is Dean. And I would like you to call me that. Whether you work for me or not now. Why don't you come in? And we'll see what we can work out." Lily looked at me for a moment before turning to the children with a scared expression. She approached the door of her car and said, "Now you two sit still and don't touch anything. I need to go talk to Mr. Peterson for a few minutes. And then we will leave." I paused and returned my attention to her. "Whoa, Missy. I didn't mean for you to leave your babies out in this heat. Bring them in too. It is not appropriate to leave children alone in a vehicle. They are unable to get into anything. My kids haven't been into it for a long time." You know, Lily seemed surprised. She gave me a weak smile before turning and saying, Okay, you two get out of the car and join me. I don't want you running around causing trouble. Either do you hear me? I watched as a young boy, perhaps 4 years old, jumped down from the front seat. His mother attempted to catch him under the arms and was somewhat successful. He looked up at her and said, "Mama, I can do it myself, you assist." While Lily assisted from the child seat in the back. The little boy marched up to me and said, "Hi, mister. My name is Timmy and I'm this big." He held up 4 fingers. "I get to go to school next year." I told Timmy to be good and not to bother Mr. Pearson. I looked up from where I was squatting in front of Timmy to see Lily approaching me with a young girl on her hip. The girl was chewing on her finger while giving me the once-over. "Dean, as he has already told you, this is Tim, my son. And this little angel is Celeste, my daughter. But I'm afraid we call her most of the time Hello." I said, "If it is okay with your mother, would you and your brother like some juice when we enter the kitchen?" She smiled and nodded at me before trying to hide her head behind her mother's shoulder. Once inside, I inquired about drinks and seated everyone at the kitchen table. I placed a cookie jar in the center and provided everyone with a drink and a napkin. Lily and I talked about what I needed in a babysitter and what I could afford to pay. She agreed on $135 a day for watching my kids with no hourly restriction if she and the kids could eat with us every day. She even agreed to do some housework and cooking on the days she was here. She also agreed to stay around most days instead of driving back and forth, which would save her money on gasoline, since I often only needed her in the mornings and evenings. I showed her around the house so she could see where things were. She agreed to begin working the next day. To my surprise, Howard and Sarah took to her and her children right away. They had been somewhat unhappy with some of the previous caregivers. As I began working longer hours with my spring planting, Lily's help became invaluable. I had about a third of my tillable land drowned in winter wheat, and the rest, about 600 acres, split between corn and soybeans. I had 60 bred cows and 300 acres for grazing or hay, along with a few chickens and hogs. Spring and fall were my busiest times. During the first week, Lily completely cleaned my house. She started in the kitchen, then moved to the bathrooms and other rooms. On the third day I sat at the table and said, "Lily, I feel bad about some of the things you're doing here. I hired you to watch the kids, not to be a house cleaner. This place looks amazing, but I don't want you to think you have to do this." Lily looked upset and said, "I thought you said light cleaning could be part of my job." "I'm sorry if I upset you. I was just trying to help." "Dean, I'll stop if you want me to. I just hate to sit here all day reading and watching the kids play." She pulled her hands to her mouth, and her eyes widened. "I won't charge you for it. I know it would be a lot to pay for all the hours I'm not watching the kids. I just feel like I need to do more." "No, Lily. That's not the problem. I just don't want you to make a habit of working yourself to death. Relax, son. I appreciate all you've done, but you don't need to be working yourself ragged all day every day." For the next week, I would sometimes find Lily sitting and watching her children play while she read. Every time I came in and she was resting, she would look guilty and begin working finally. One day, I fetched myself a beer and stepped into the room where she was working. "Lily, I need to talk to you for a few minutes. Would you please come into the kitchen with me?" Lily looked up from her dusting and said, "I'm sorry, Dean, I was just resting for a moment." I signed and walked over to Lily, gently taking the dust rag from her hand, leading her to the couch. I sat down and pulled her down beside me. Turning to her, I said, "Lily, have I ever said I was unhappy with what you do around here?" Lily bit her lip and shook her head. "No, well, if I'm not unhappy and I haven't complained or yelled at you for not doing something, then why do you always jump up and start working again when I enter? You make me feel like an ogre. Like you're terrified of me or something. I've told you I don't expect you to work all the time, and I don't want you to. But Charles always said no house can be too clean, and he got upset when he came in from working hard and I was resting. Was there, Lily? I do. I look like Charles?" Do you see me resting from time to time? Have I ever said or done anything that made you think I cared if you read a book or played with your kids? I hired you to watch my kids and told you it was okay to just stay here during the day while you weren't working. You were the one who offered to do some cooking and light housework for me. I smiled and continued. I would take it as a personal favor if you would just chill a little and relax around me. Okay, Lily offered me a timid smile and nodded. I'll try, but I don't know if I can do that, Dane. Lily improved over the next few days in terms of springing up to work when I arrived. Sometimes if I stayed in the house for long, she couldn't bear it and would find something to do. But she was improving one afternoon. I had just started working after a quick lunch when my planter failed. A wheel bearing seized up, prohibiting the wheel from rotating correctly. I was stuck. I unhitched the tractor and raced to the shop for my tools. Lily was in the yard watching her kids play when I drove onto the lot. She watched as I jumped from the tractor and hurried into the house. Already on the phone, Lily accompanied me into my office as I presented my situation to the implement dealer. I was flipping through my planter manual while talking. The dealer checked if they had the necessary parts in stock so I could do the repairs. I informed him that I would be in as soon as possible. I hung up, moaning about the 2-hour travel and the time I'd spend on the repair. Lily came up behind me and placed her hand on my shoulder. I heard what you said to the dealer. I can drive into town and get the part for you if you wish. That way you can begin the repair and return to work quickly. I could see Lily was concerned when I glanced into her eyes. I was also relieved at the notion of saving time. Okay, why not? Thanks, Lily, that would be a huge help. Take my truck since this is a farm company. When you get back, deliver it across the street to where I work. You will notice the machines in the field from there. Lily grinned and replied, no problem, Dane. She went to the kitchen door and said, kids, come on. We need to go to town for Mr. Peterson, hurry up. We need to buy a part for his planter so we can return to work. To my astonishment, Lily and the kids had their car seats moved from her old Mustang to the back seat of my truck and were going down my road before I could get my repair trailer onto the tractor. I was on my way back to the field to begin the repairs. When I arrived in the field, less than 30 minutes after breaking down, I began disassembling the planter in preparation for repair. I spotted a broken weld and repaired it. I had problems removing the wheel and old bearing since the race had partially welded itself to the shaft. I just completed dismantling when Lily came into view. I heard her racing through the stream, concerned since I hadn't inquired if she knew how to shift the truck into 4-wheel drive. Sometimes you needed it because the pebbles were slick and the bank was steep. Lily rushed from the truck and groped for the parts. She approached me, holding a bag from the parts store in one hand and a large insulated cup of iced tea in the other. When I grabbed for the components, she shook her head. You look like you need a drink right now. It won't take long. I smiled and took the drink, drenching it in less than a minute. She then handed me the bag of pieces. I returned to work and felt a presence near me. I looked up and saw a tiny Tim squatting next to me. Kal-El watching. I smiled and kept working. Soon after, I felt another shadow and looked up to see Lily standing behind Tim. On her hip, both of them staring at me. I continued working. My audience remained silent. After nearly 2 hours, I fastened the final bolt and stood up. Lily took a step back and Tim stood to watch me. I was followed back and forth as I changed the tools in my toolbox on the repair trailer. Lily had been instructed 3 times not to remain but had stayed regardless. She had only returned to the house once to pick up my children after school. I gazed at my audience before turning to Lily. I'm going to take off down the field to check how everything works. Okay, if everything is fine, can you return the trailer to the shop? She nodded as I continued. If I cook it up for you, I suppose I could try, but I'd rather not break it. I have never pulled a trailer before. It's really simple, Lily. Just park the truck in front of the business. I'll put it away when I return. Everything will be fine if you move carefully through the creek. That night, I worked through supper and stayed up until nearly midnight planting maize. I went to the house when I arrived home tomorrow. I would begin preparing the field for the soybeans I intended to sow later. Almost all of the lights were turned on in the kitchen and living room. I left the tractor hooked to the planter in the shed and started the truck. Putting it next to the tractor, I'd unplug everything as I walked into the kitchen in the morning. I noticed Lily standing by the stove, dressed in an old t-shirt based on her movements. I didn't think she wore anything underneath. She grinned as she looked over her shoulder at me. "Why don't we go clean up? I'll have your meal ready when you return, Dean Lily. You didn't have to do this. I am sorry I worked so late. I forgot you must drive all the way back to Jackie." Everything was going so great that I just continued pushing to finish. Lily grinned and said, "Don't worry about it. If I had to leave, I could have come to get you. I called Jackie and informed her that you were still in the field." She looked unsure of herself for a time before continuing. "I told her that if she didn't mind, I'd just sleep on the couch tonight because it was so late. I truly dislike having to wake the kids up. Well, I do mind, Lily. I was irresponsible. And I do not want you sleeping on my couch tonight." When I noticed Lily's surprised expression, I paused. "Shoot, Lily, I apologize. I didn't mean it that way. I was only sorry I worked so late and wanted you to sleep in my guest room rather than on the couch. There's no reason to sleep on the couch when you can sleep in your own bed. Did you put your kids in there, Lily?" She nearly whispered no. "They all wanted to sleep with you. So I put him in the bed with Howard and with Sarah. Is that okay?" I smiled and took a step toward Lily. "Yes, it is fine, Lily. I am sorry for what I said previously. It's fine if you stay here tonight and any future nights I have a wild hair and work too late." I turned and walked into my master bathroom to clean up. I returned to the kitchen and found Lily preparing one of my favorite dishes. She prepared meatloaf, mashed potatoes, green beans, and whole kernel corn. It looked great and tasted even better, honestly. A 2-day-old roadkill skunk would have tasted wonderful at the time. I hadn't eaten since a sandwich for lunch. Weeks flew by. My work improved more than it had in years. And Lily became practically vital. She basically took over the house and yard, even looking after the chickens and helping around the hog cage. I lost track of how many trips she took into town for parts, seeds and other requirements. She was more helpful than any of my previous wives, both of whom had grown up on farms. Many evenings when I worked late, she and the kids would sleep over eventually. I suggested they leave some clothes at home for convenience. On the 4th of July I proclaimed a family holiday. I was caught up enough with work to take a break and invited Lily, her children Jackie and her husband Edward, to my house for a big supper and a swim in the stream. After a supper of barbecue brisket, fried chicken, and all the trimmings, I watched the women clean up and smile. I tried to aid but was promptly escorted away. The two sisters chuckled and joked as they worked, while the children played with Ed and the women occasionally laughed. I strolled off and sat near the stream, watching the water slowly run through the swimming hole at the yard's edge. I could hear the children laughing as they played with Ed, as well as the women laughing on occasion. Occasionally I heard a neighbor let off fireworks. My gut clenched as my thoughts strayed back to my past. What I was hearing on this hot July day was exactly what I had hoped for during my 3 previous marriages. I had 2 great children and several friends, but I didn't have anyone to share with. I was still alone and growing too old to hope for the nugget of gold that other men had discovered. Terry, the girl I grew up with, the tomboy from the next farm over, betrayed me almost immediately. We hadn't been in the city long when she started hanging out with female acquaintances and eventually cheating on me with one of my colleagues. Then there was Mary, a lovely, lively, and friendly instructor I met at a nearby cafe. God, how I adored that woman. She was certified but enjoyed the country life until she saw what a farmer's wife had to go through. Despite her stated love for children, the late hours, dust, dirt, greasy clothes, and missed weekends in town gradually took their toll. She despised being constrained by my job and our children. Mary dedicated more time to her school duties and worked as a chaperone at away games. Eventually, she started driving herself to games and partying with the head coach before returning home. When they uncovered the affair confronted her, she chuckled and remarked, "At least now I can return to the good life. I loved you once, Dean. No real lady can live this kind of life year after year. I'm sorry, but I need more than sitting on the balcony at night. Too sleepy to go to bed during the divorce." Mary was granted primary care of the children and attempted to extract some value from the land. She was furious when she found that my mother still owned the farm and everything on it. I was paid a wage for working on the farm, which was lower than her salary, so she would receive no assistance. However, I did face significant child support obligations. Less than a year after our divorce, I learned that Mary intended to take the children to Japan. She and her new partner had landed jobs with the Department of Defense school system. I refused to let her take the children out of the country, resulting in another legal battle that I won. She was barred from transporting the children outside of the state. To my amazement, she then granted me complete custody. When I conveyed my amazement, she said, "What you did to me and the kids is wrong. A youngster should be with their mother. I can't pass up this opportunity to travel the world because you're a selfish jerk. You have children now, you'll see how difficult it is to balance a life and work while caring for them." She smiled at me, hugged the kids one last time before leaving with her new partner. My third wife, Patty. Cheating on me was not surprising in hindsight. I should not have married her. I was lonely and desperate. We hit it off well at first, and I chose to overlook her flirtations with her fellow sheriff's officers. We met at Jackie's and began dating shortly afterward. We had much in common. I had been a police officer for 2 years before quitting my job due to my first marriage splitting up, and she worked as a sheriff's dispatcher. We knew a few of the same individuals, and she grew up on a vast farm in Iowa. I remembered how we used to joke around when I worked in law enforcement. I ignored her actions until one day when I went to see her and discovered her in her car with another deputy. They were on their lunch break, and she was performing an extremely compromising act. Furious, I ended up in another altercation. But he didn't press charges, and I didn't lose my job this time. As I sat slumped in dejection, staring across my fields, I noticed my eyes watering again, which I blamed on the dust and bright lights. I felt a presence nearby and turned to find Lily standing about 10 feet behind me. She frowned when she saw my face and walked over, plopping down beside me. "What is wrong, Dean?" she asked, wiping the tears from my cheeks. "Nothing. I'm just sitting here listening to the happy sounds and thinking. You can't fool me, Dean. Those tears I brushed off your cheek were not happy tears. Judging by the look on your face now. Tell me what is wrong." I insisted there was nothing wrong until she did something unexpected. She hit me with her fist and began crying. "Damn it. Dean, I've worked for you for 4 months. I've been with you almost every day. And I know something's wrong today. It is not something Jackie, the children, or I have done, because you usually tell us. And you don't cry when you do. And don't try to feed me the old allergy or sunlight excuse. You've never had trouble with allergies, and you know it. And the wind isn't blowing enough to blow something into your eye." Finally I signed and said, "Okay, Lily. I suppose I was feeling sorry for myself. I'm a damn loser and it hurts." I was listening to the kids laughing and playing with Ed, and you girls were laughing in the kitchen while I sat here all alone. I've been married 3 times, and each time I chose a cheating woman. I've concluded I'll never find or have a good woman for a wife. I'm a loser." Lily looked at me in shock, then slapped me before I could do more than raise my hand to my burning cheek. She started yelling, "You're a fool, Dean. You know there's nothing wrong with you. Well, maybe there is. You're too gullible. And you don't see what a woman really is before you marry her. Then you're too trusting." "No, I don't mean that. I mean they betray your trust. And you think there's something wrong with you. The only thing wrong with you is that you don't do your research before you let your heart or your dick lead you into something you should run away from." I'm the one with the problem. What man wants a twice-divorced woman with 2 kids? I feel like a burden ready to drag any man down. No one wants a ready-made family that drains their income. If I can accept that and find contentment, why can't you be happy with what you have, Dane? You have 2 wonderful children, work you love, and friends who would do anything for you. You've got it all. And someday you'll find the right woman if you just stay open to the possibility. Lily stood up and started toward the house. Then paused. She said, I almost forgot. The kids are ready for cake and ice cream, that is. If you can pull yourself together and join us. I sat for a moment, watching Lily as she walked briskly back to the house. Finally got up and followed her. When I entered the kitchen, I noticed someone sitting at the table, looking at the living room with a puzzled expression, and turning to me asking what happened out there. I've never seen Lily that mad. I suppose I upset her. We had a talk, and she didn't like some of the things I said. Just then, Jackie came into the kitchen and glared at me. She shook her head and said, Dane, sometimes I think you are the dumbest man on earth. She then turned and began cutting the cake, serving it with ice cream. It was silent as we all ate afterward. We washed up and strolled outdoors into the cooler evening. We sat by the stream, watching the kids play in the water while the adults chatted. Occasionally, we saw fireworks in the distance from nearby houses and from the Steel Veil display. Around 10 p.m., Jackie decided to head home since they had work the next day. Lily gathered her children, and they all piled into Ed's SUV for the drive back. My children and I watched until they turned onto the highway. Then we went inside for bath and bed that night. I struggled to sleep, playing my past and Candy's words by the creek. Maybe she was right, but I couldn't believe it. I'd known Terry almost my entire life. How could I have predicted what she'd do? Mary was a teacher who went to church every Sunday. Who would have thought she'd cheat? I'd known her for months before we started dating, and we were together for almost a year before marrying. I thought I knew her well. Lily might have been right about Patty. We dated for only 9 months before marrying, but she worked in law enforcement and grew up on a farm. I finally understood the kind of character those jobs required. What was I doing wrong? What was Candy trying to tell me? To my surprise, I was still asleep the next morning when Lily and her children arrived. I hadn't expected them so early because all I had planned was making hay, and I couldn't start until the dew was off the grass around 10:00 a.m. I woke up abruptly when 4 children burst into my room and hit the side of the bed. It was after 7:00 a.m. Sarah smiled and said, "Come on, Daddy, Lily's making breakfast, and she says you have to come now or it will be cold. She's making your favorite omelets and pecan oatmeal waffles for us kids." "Yeah, Mr. Pearson, come on, we got to eat now." She started to pull the covers off me, and I grabbed the sheet. "No, don't do that." Tim and Howard noticed what she was doing, grabbed the sheet too and pulled. I lost my grip, and the sheet fell to the floor next to the bed. As I reached for it, I heard footsteps in the hallway. Lily walked into the room and said, "Hey, what's the hold up? I need you in the kitchen right now, or the food will be cold." She looked up and froze in horror as I drew the cover back over myself. Little Tim made matters worse. "Mommy, why is Mr. Peterson naked? You won't let me sleep naked. Why does he?" Candace blushed deepened, and she turned away. "You kids get out of Mr. Peterson's room now. He'll be along shortly." When I entered the kitchen, I found Lily in a bit of a struggle with Tim. I paused to hear her explanation about my choice of sleepwear or lack thereof. "Tim, sometimes adults make choices that aren't suitable for youngsters." "Well, it's Mr. Peterson's house, so you can sleep however he wants. I mean, I can sleep naked now in our house. That's so cool." "Hey, we can sleep naked now in our house." "No, that's not what I mean, Tim," I intervened, taking my place at the table looking at him. "Let me handle this one, Lily. Sometimes adults choose to do things." I noticed Candy's glare and adjusted my approach. "Well, Tim, I suppose it's a matter of comfort and privacy. But mostly it's an adult thing. Grown-ups don't worry about being seen naked in their own rooms. And sometimes it's better for them to sleep that way. When you're older, you'll understand these things better, but for now, you need to listen to your mother because she knows when it's appropriate to do certain things and when it isn't. You know, in the solitude of your own room, sometimes it's permissible to do things that wouldn't be okay otherwise. So if I'm alone in my room, I can be naked too. No, Tim, you need to follow your mother's rules. And sometimes adults might need to check on you. So you shouldn't be naked where they might see you. But Mommy sees me naked all the time. Why can she see me in the bathtub and when I'm dressing but not when I'm sleeping? Well, Tim, because she has to help you with those things. But she doesn't need to help you sleep. You can sleep alone. And you need to be dressed in your jammies. So it's good for an adult to sleep naked because no one will see them. Okay, sort of, Tim, it's the adult's choice. Nobody should be naked where others might be offended or in public. You know, I was in my bed alone. And no one could see me. I was properly protected, therefore. There was no issue until your sister came in and ripped the covers off of me. That is what was wrong with it. It's like if someone tried to undress you in town. Wouldn't that be inappropriate? Tim smiled and nodded in acknowledgement. So it's as if we stripped you down, Mr. Peterson. I'm sorry for it, but if covers are like clothes, why can't I sleep naked and cover up? Lily smiled at me, attempting to conceal her laughter. She's a curious one, isn't she? Okay, Tim. That's enough. You need to understand that this is Mr. Peterson's bedroom and home. He can do whatever he wants and it is grown up. And if he wants to sleep naked or in a suit, that is his choice. You cannot do it because I am your mother. And I say no. Okay, Mommy, bye. I really wish I could sleep naked after breakfast. I walked out to the patio and sipped my coffee. Once Lily had cleaned up, she sat down alongside me on the swing, holding her own cup. I looked at her. She wore a cheeky smirk. He's a curious one, isn't he, Dean? He's only a small boy, you know. And I've yet to meet someone who doesn't relish the opportunity to strip down. Thank you for attempting to handle it. We had another cup of coffee before I realized it was time to head to work. Things went smoothly and for once I finished early. I sent Lily and the children home ahead of time. Lily, on the other hand, appeared to be disturbed as to why I insisted on cleaning up the kitchen myself. It was finally time for Candy's divorce hearing. Her spouse had been dragging his feet for more than 4 months. I planned my schedule so that I could watch all 4 children while she was in court. We decided to go into town to get some supplies I needed, filters and other equipment parts. So one of our trips was at the implement dealer. The parts clerk smiled as I walked in. Hey, Dean. It has been a while. Where is your beautiful wife today? A cold ran through my body, and I must have appeared shocked. The cashier swiftly added, I apologize for the sensitive topic. I'm just used to seeing her in here purchasing components for you. So say hello to her when you arrive home. I am not married anymore. We have been divorced for about a year. What? You're divorced? But she's still rushing around acquiring parts for you. How did you do that? I was bewildered. Patty had never come to get components for me. I finally clarified, do you mean Lily? She is not my wife. She just helps out with the kids and goes errands on occasion. She is at the courtroom today trying to divorce her adulterous spouse. I apologize for the confusion. You must be joking. Right, the way that woman talks about you, Dan. I wish my lover had talked about me like that. So, what will we get today? I was relieved this was my final stop. I couldn't shrug it off what old man Scoggin stated at the parts counter. What had Lily said about me? Lily and I returned to my residence around the same time. She walked into the house, seemed genuinely upset. I looked at her and asked, how is it today? Is everything sorted? Candy's face contorted, and tears streamed down. She choked out, yes, no. The judge granted the divorce, but he is withholding child support until the children's DNA tests are completed. That jerk claims they aren't his children and is attempting to avoid child support. How can you believe that he is the one who cheated? When exactly would I have had the time? Even if I wanted to. Lily collapsed on the couch next to me. Without thinking, I wrapped my arm around her and pulled her close to my chest. I ran my fingers through her hair as the 4 children entered the room. Asked what was wrong, and attempted to hug her mother. I told the kids, "Your mother is upset because your father said some hurtful things to her today. Why don't you go play in your room while I speak with her and attempt to make her feel better?" Lily looked up at me trying to smile. Her hand lightly touched my chest as she wrapped her arm around me. She lay there silently crying for several minutes. I just held her and stroked her gently to calm her. Her sobs gradually subsided. I decided to look down and saw her breathing softly, peacefully asleep against my chest. Damn. What am I going to do now? I remained seated, holding Lily while she slept. Almost 30 minutes later she stirred and awoke. Her eyes opened and she sat up abruptly, blushing. "I apologized, Dean," she said. "Why did you let me fall asleep on you? No worries. Lily, you obviously needed the rest. And I didn't mind at all. I didn't have anything better to do than to comfort a friend. Really well, thank you anyway. I think I should get dinner started now. It's going to be late as it is." Lily headed for the kitchen but turned back to me. "Dean, would you mind if we stayed the night tonight? I really don't feel like driving to Jackie's after dinner." "No problem, Lily, you don't even need to ask. I enjoy having you here actually once school starts. I think you should spend weeknights here so Tim can attend kindergarten nearby. That way, you can keep working without worrying about arrangements for him and Jackie. We'll just inform the school that you resigned here, and they'll enroll him as a resident student." "Dean, are you suggesting that I move in with you?" "Well, not exactly. I mean, it would be easier for you and the kids if you just stayed here. I don't expect anything else from you. We can carry on as we are now." "I suppose we can do that. Are you sure you don't mind? I feel like we are imposing staying here even more. Maybe you should pay me less now that we are here more often." Over the next 3 weeks, Lily gradually moved all her and the kids' belongings into my house. Jackie helped her a couple of times, shooting me a smirk that made me inquisitive. I pondered what was behind it. Just before school started, the DNA tests confirmed that Charles was the father of Candy's children. The court ordered child support, but no alimony was granted. It turned out that what I was already paying Lily was close to Charles's income, so there was no additional support. Even the child support was minimal, just $125 per week per child. After moving in, Lily took over even more household chores. She managed the houseyard chickens, and even the garden during the season. She also assisted with the hog operation and helped me with the cattle. I began to realize how much she was doing and how I had struggled along before. Sometimes, I found myself smiling as I realized I hadn't been keeping up with things. Now, we were tackling lower priority repairs and even sprucing up the house together. Surprisingly, we had joy doing it. Lily was not only efficient but also a delight to work with and be around. When a neighbor's kid joined the military, I bought his 10-year-old truck. It was in terrific shape, and I needed a dependable second vehicle besides Candy's old junker. She voluntarily came along to pick it up, and I had her try it at home when we arrived. I demanded she retain the keys and put the extra set on the key rack. I told her, "No, Lily, you keep them. I want you to drive either the new truck or mine when you leave. I don't want to chance your old junker breaking down like clockwork." Lily glanced at me for a time, then fell into tears and hurried to her bedroom. That fall, we celebrated Thanksgiving and Christmas in my farmhouse when I had no local family. Candy's brother and sister, together with their families, joined us. It was a happy moment with children playing and laughter filling the home. And the women, including Lily, partied hard. I ate so much of their excellent food that I was almost sick. We even held a tiny New Year's celebration after our friends had left. Lily poured us each a glass of port while we sat in the dimly lit den, Watching the Christmas tree lights twinkle. Lily leaned into me and rested her head on my shoulder. And I wrapped my arm around her while we relaxed together. I sensed her trembling. I looked down and saw tears silently falling down her cheeks. "What is wrong, honey?" I whispered. "What is wrong with me, Dean? Why are you always treating me like one of the guys? What did I do to cause you to feel this way about me? I am not just another easy woman, Dean. Was it due to what happened on the night of my divorce hearing? I could understand you holding back when I was still married. But what is the cause now? Why do you have no passion for me anymore?" I panicked. "Lily, where did this suddenly come from? I thought we were doing okay. There is absolutely nothing wrong with you. I know you've seen me vulnerable. But I wouldn't put that on you, honestly, Lily. I admire you more than any other woman. You're such a great help around here. And I appreciate every moment we spend together. I trust you totally because I know you'll have my back through thick and thin. How useful you are for me. You are light years ahead of the 3 people I was married to. There's nothing wrong with you." My gut twisted. And horror gripped my heart. Was she actually going in that direction? And if she was, could I stand going through it again? "We desperately need to speak, Lily. If you're going somewhere, I believe you're misunderstanding. I am not sure if that is a good idea. I've considered it. But I'm not sure I can take another heartbreak. I have been a failure every time." Lily recoiled. Anger flashed in her eyes. "Damn it, Dean. Are you insinuating that I am as worthless as the 3 you married and divorced? Is this it? I've been divorced twice. And I'm unsuitable for you. Haven't I proved my worth? We have been living together for about 2 years. Our children view us as a family. We've practically been married in every sense except legally and physically. You've even added my name to your accounts. If you do not trust me, why did you do that? Don't you love me? No. I guess I am afraid of being hurt again. Don't you think I want to protect my children from that pain? Ken, how about now? Do you think our children would be upset if we separated? It would tear me apart. And I know it would harm you as well. All I asked for is the opportunity to physically demonstrate my love for you. If you don't want to marry me, that's great. I will live with you outside of marriage. Everyone in town already assumes we are. So what is the difference, Lily? I can't handle this right now. I need to rest. I apologize. I got up and left, leaving Lily on the couch, tears softly pouring down her cheeks. I've ruined what could have been a wonderful holiday season. I would have described it as the nicest thing that ever happened to me and my children. And now I may lose her. Damn, sleep eluded me. I heard Lily in the kitchen for what seemed like hours after I went to sleep. Until at last the lights went out. It was nearly 4:00 a.m. when I gave up and left the bed. I wandered through the darkened house, unable to find peace. The children would wake up in a few hours. Beginning another day, another year. Or would it come to a halt? I poured myself another glass of Glenlivet and looked out the window. A noise startled me. And I turned to see Lily standing there. Looking at me, she smiled faintly and continued. I guess I messed up today. Would you like me to leave? I apologized for what I said, Dean. I couldn't understand what was going on. In that time when Candy questioned if she should leave, I felt a sensation of emptiness and fear. She stood behind me, lighted by the moonlight, appearing vulnerable without realizing it. I found myself approaching her, wrapping my arms around her. I brought her close to me. And our first meaningful kiss took place in that embrace. Well, that wasn't entirely correct. We had previously exchanged kisses, but they were more platonic. This kiss carried the weight of lover's passion. Lily's soft moon resonated as she brushed up against me. As I looked into Candy's eyes, I whispered, "No. Please do not go. I would be completely lost without you here. If you were to leave, I don't think I could take it. The others simply wounded me, but you take a piece of my heart with you. And I worry I will die without it." Confusion clouded her expression as she spoke. I kissed her again, sensing her surrender. I had to keep her steady as she appeared to weaken. Gathering her into my arms, I brought her into her bedroom. It came closer than mine. And without bothering to close the door, I carefully laid her on the bed and showed her shortly afterward what followed was hours of exquisite intimacy. I abruptly moved away from Lily, shocking her. "Dean, what is wrong?" she inquired, her voice filled with anxiety. "Wait," I exclaimed as I ran for my room. My footsteps echoed through the hallway, across the living room, and into my bedroom while I feverishly searched through the jewels in a bowl on my dresser. Lily approached me after my unplanned departure from her bed. Neither of us bothered to dress. "This is the moment." I finally turned to Lily, tears running down her cheeks again, and took her left hand in mine. I hoisted her up. "I discovered it, Lily. I want you to get it. It belonged to my mother. When will you marry me?" "I'm convinced this is correct, Lily. Nothing has occurred to you that is not what occurred to me." I was scared and self-pitying. He awoke me. "I know this is the correct thing to do." Candy's face lit up with a bright smile, and her left hand gently nudged the ring I held on as she whispered the affirmative. I slipped my mother's engagement ring onto Candy's finger. We kissed and then turned to face the bed. Nestled under the covers, Lily chuckled gently. "At least this way, I won't have to sleep in a wet location," she teased, laying a soft kiss on my lips. "Good night, honey." Daddy, we can't find Lily. She isn't in her room or the kitchen." "Do you know where she is?" The sound of a stampede reminiscent of an elephant echoed through the den and into my bedroom. Crap, the door was wide open, displaying chocolates still tucked in my bed. Quickly as the stampede rushed into my room, I moved to better protect her. All 4 children paused and fixed their gaze on Lily and me. She too had been awakened by the disturbance and was pulling a blanket over herself. She was blushing too. God, she was gorgeous naturally. "Tim did it again. Why are you laying in bed with Mr. Peterson?" he asked. I could not help myself. I broke out laughing. Lily glanced at me, blushing even more. I slid over, leaning against the bed's headboard, and drew myself closer to the chocolates. I tapped the edge of the bed and asked, "Why don't you kids sit here for a minute? Mommy and I need to talk to you. Last night, your mother finally made me realize that I had been sticking my head in the mine. I mean, your mother and I recently decided to be married. Now she'll be your mother and I'll be your father. Is this okay with you?" Sarah looked around at the others and smiled excitedly. She nodded in chorus, but Tim said, "I thought she was our mother. And you were our father. That doesn't change anything, does it? But why did this happen? Did Mom sleep here last night rather than in her room? And why was she sleeping naked?" "She doesn't normally sleep naked," she stated. "We shouldn't sleep naked." Lily chuckled despite herself, looked at her, and hugged Timmy. "Timmy, when a man and a woman love each other as your mother and I do, they sleep naked together to grow closer and love one another more. That is why you children should not enter our bedroom without first knocking and requesting permission. You don't want to see your mother naked and make her upset. Do you? It would deeply hurt her feelings. And you don't want to do that, right?" Timmy shook his head, indicating mute rejection. Sarah observed us with a grin on her face. "I am overjoyed that Lily will be our new mommy. We adore you both very much. When are you planning to tie the knot?" she inquired enthusiastically. Lily smiled and responded, "We aren't sure yet, Sarah. Hopefully soon. But there are a lot of details to work out first." The smaller kids had gathered on the bed, clambering over goodies, and the phone rang. And Sarah quickly grabbed it up. "Hello, yes. I am not sure. Guess what? Daddy and Lily are planning to get married," she exclaimed with delight in her voice. I tried to intercede and take Sarah's phone, but she managed to avoid my hands. "Okay, sure, bye," she explained before hanging up. "Sarah, you should not have discussed that with Jackie," I admonished gently. "Why not, Dad? Was this intended to be a secret?" "No, however, your mother most likely preferred to deliver the news herself," explained reluctantly. Lily beside me began to tremble, and I turned to face Sarah as she apologized. I apologize, Mom. Lily began to struggle. And I drew her closer to me. What's the problem? Honey, I asked quietly. She shook her hand, mumbling bitterly, and said nothing. It is nothing at all. You called me her mommy. She addressed me as Mom. I led the kids into the den to watch cartoons while I embraced Lily, comforting her as she cried and eventually composed herself. I heard gravel shifting and a car door slammed shut. The rear door flew open, and thundering footsteps reverberated throughout the home. Voices came from the den, followed by hurried footsteps towards our bedroom. I turned to face the door just as Jackie stormed in, dressed in her full sheriff uniform. She came to a halt in the middle of the bed when she noticed me snuggling next to her sister. Lily's lovely figure lay naked, her bosom cuddled on my chest. Jackie placed her hands on her hips, a mixture of displeasure and relief spreading across her expression. It's about time you, exclaimed Jackie. I was growing tired of hearing Lily whine and sob about your negligence. I was tempted to put you out of her agony. Taking a seat at the bed's edge, Jackie did not waste any time in seeking an explanation. Spit it out, and quick. I need to get back on patrol. How did you manage to crack through Lily's thick skull? I met Jackie's gaze, my eyes reflecting a request for seclusion. Jackie, could you please give us a moment? I need to get dressed and prepare some coffee for the time being. It appears that sleep is not an option. With a resigned sigh, Jackie complied and exited the room. But as I attempted to get out of bed, she shot me a harsh look. I'll start the coffee, but keep it quick. Jackie's voice pierced the air, prompting me to race into the restroom for my clothes. We tied the wedding on Valentine's Day. Life continued largely as it had previously, except now Lily shared my bed, and our love grew in all aspects. Then one day, Lily delivered the news we were expecting. Regardless of our ages, we resolved to embrace motherhood as soon as possible. I kept a promise I made to her as our child started kindergarten. Lily burst into tears as she struggled with the passage of time and her feelings of aging. I took her hand and led her back to our home. Darling, let's think about this. With the kids away and chores completed, what shall we do with ourselves? Fine, quiet. Lily came to a halt, drawing me near. Her speech was filled with emotion. I'm not sure, but I have a few ideas, she said softly, her palm gently touching my cheek. Dean, I adore you more than words can say. I had previously stumbled in life's game, but with Sweets and her child by my side, I understood I had hit a grand slam. They demonstrated the fundamental essence of love and fulfillment. To life's distractions, thank you for tuning in. If you enjoyed this episode of the story, please give it a like. And don't forget to subscribe to get notifications for updates.